I replaced my wife with a younger woman, and now my life. My name's Connor, and I'm 43 years old. I used to think that life would get easier as you got older, that the struggles of youth would give way to a more peaceful existence. But here I am, feeling more lost than ever. My marriage, which I once believed would be my anchor, now feels like a ship that's sinking. It's been years since I first noticed the cracks. At first, they were small. Little arguments about insignificant things that somehow escalated into shouting matches. I thought it was just a phase, something we'd get through if we worked hard enough. But the cracks grew, and they started to show more than just a few disagreements. They revealed a deep dissatisfaction that neither of us seemed able to address. My wife, Laura, and I met when we were both in our late 20s. She was vibrant, full of life, and I was drawn to her energy. We married after a whirlwind romance, believing that love would be enough to sustain us through anything. We bought a house, settled into our routines, and for a while, things seemed perfect. But somewhere along the way, that love started to fade. Our arguments started off as small irritations. I'd forget to take out the trash, or she'd leave the dishes in the sink. It wasn't the small things that bothered me, it was the way they were handled. Laura would snap at me, her voice sharp and cutting, leaving me feeling like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. I'd try to calm the situation, to reason with her, but it felt like my words fell on deaf ears. It wasn't just the arguments, though. It was the silence that followed them. The quiet dinners, where we'd sit across from each other, not speaking, the distant look in her eyes that told me she was somewhere else. The emotional distance was like a chasm growing between us, one that I didn't know how to bridge. There was a time when we used to talk about our dreams and aspirations, but those conversations had become rare. Instead, we'd exchange cold remarks and brief, polite conversations about the daily necessities. It felt like we were just two people coexisting in the same space, not really living together. My job wasn't helping either. I worked as a project manager at a company that seemed to value profits over people. Long hours and constant pressure had drained me, leaving me feeling worn out and disconnected. Coming home to the tension with Laura only made things worse. I'd walk through the door, hoping for some comfort, but all I found was more stress and frustration. I tried to talk to Laura about it, but every attempt felt like it just made things worse. She would accuse me of not understanding her, of being selfish, and I felt helpless. We'd argue in circles, never really getting to the heart of the problem. It was like we were both stuck in a cycle of blame and hurt, unable to find a way out. I started to question whether this was what life was supposed to be like. Was this what I had signed up for when I said I do? I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was. I felt like I was living a life that wasn't mine, trapped in a relationship that was slowly suffocating me. One evening, after another particularly intense argument about something trivial, like the placement of the mail on the kitchen counter, I found myself sitting alone in our living room, trying to piece together what had just happened. Laura had stormed out, leaving me in a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty. The silence was deafening, and I realized that I didn't even know what to do next. I had hoped that time apart would help us both cool off, but when Laura came back, the tension was still there. I tried to reach out to her, to show her that I wanted to make things better, but every gesture seemed to be met with suspicion or indifference. It was as if we were speaking different languages, and I couldn't find the right words to bridge the gap. That's when I started to notice how unhappy I was becoming. I would find myself dreading coming home, feeling a sense of relief when I was away from the constant conflict. I was slowly becoming a shadow of the person I used to be. And I didn't like the person I was turning into. I knew that something had to change. The constant arguments, the emotional distance, the growing sense of resentment, it was all too much. But what could I do? How could I fix something that seemed so fundamentally broken? In the quiet moments of reflection, I began to wonder if there was more to life than this. If there was a way to find happiness again. To live a life that wasn't marred by constant conflict and dissatisfaction. But the answer wasn't clear, and I found myself at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. It was during this period of uncertainty that I stumbled upon a chance meeting that would change everything. It was an ordinary Saturday morning when my life took an unexpected turn. I had decided to do the laundry myself that day, something I hadn't done in a while. The laundromat near our house was a small, nondescript place, a far cry from the convenience of our modern appliances. But there I was, dragging a bag of clothes through the door, hoping for a quick and uneventful task. As I was sorting through my clothes and loading them into the machines, I noticed a woman across the room. She was in her late 20s, with an easy smile and a kind expression that seemed to brighten the dull surroundings. She was neatly folding a pile of clothes, and the way she moved with such calm and grace caught my attention. I tried to ignore the impulse to start a conversation. After all, I was there with my own laundry and didn't really want to make small talk. But there was something about her presence that drew me in. I found myself glancing over more frequently, and it wasn't long before she noticed me. "Hi there," she said, her voice warm and friendly. "Do you mind if I ask how long the dryers usually take?" I was taken aback by her directness, but found myself smiling in return. "Not at all. They usually take about 45 minutes. Are you new here?" "Yeah, I've only just moved to this part of town," she replied, her eyes meeting mine with genuine interest. "I'm still figuring out where everything is." We fell into an easy conversation. Her name was Emily, and she had recently moved to the area for a new job. She talked about her transition to the city and her experiences so far, and I listened, genuinely intrigued. Her enthusiasm was refreshing, a stark contrast to the monotony I'd been feeling in my own life. As we talked, I began to realize how much I'd missed having a conversation that felt real and engaging. With Laura, conversations had become strained and mechanical, often leading to arguments other than connection. Emily's presence was a breath of fresh air, and I found myself looking forward to our exchanges. Our conversations became a regular occurrence. I started going to the laundromat more frequently, not just out of necessity, but because I wanted to see Emily. We talked about everything: our favorite movies, our childhoods, our dreams for the future. She had an infectious optimism that made me see life in a new light. It was strange and exciting to feel this kind of spark again. One day, as we were both waiting for our laundry to finish, Emily suggested grabbing coffee at a nearby cafe. I hesitated at first. This was not something I'd ever done before, and I wasn't sure if it was appropriate given my situation at home. But something about the way Emily looked at me, with her hopeful eyes and warm smile, made it hard to say no. The cafe was cozy and inviting, with soft music playing in the background and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. We sat at a small table by the window, and as we talked, I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't expected. I shared bits of my life, the struggles in my marriage, and the frustration I'd been feeling. Emily listened attentively, never judging, simply offering a compassionate ear. Her empathy and understanding felt like a balm to my wounded spirit. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly heard and valued. As the weeks went by, our connection deepened. What started as casual conversations at the laundromat and cafe turned into something more significant. We began spending more time together, exploring the city and sharing experiences. Emily had a way of making even the simplest moments feel special, and I found myself looking forward to every opportunity we had to be together. One evening, as we were walking through a park, Emily took my hand in hers. It was a simple gesture, but it sent a wave of warmth through me. I realized how much I had been yearning for this kind of intimacy and affection. Emily's touch was gentle, and her presence made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. Our relationship began to evolve into something more romantic. We shared tender moments, and I found myself falling for her in a way I hadn't anticipated. It was exhilarating and frightening all at once. Emily was everything I had been missing: passionate, caring, and full of life. She made me see that there was more to happiness than just going through the motions. Every time we were together, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Emily's joy was contagious, and it reminded me of the person I used to be before the weight of my unhappy marriage had taken its toll. She brought light into my life, and with her, I began to dream of a future that felt vibrant and full of possibilities. Of course, I knew that my involvement with Emily was complicated. I was still married, and the ethical and emotional implications of my actions weighed heavily on me. But the more time I spent with her, the more I realized that I needed to confront my own situation and make choices that would lead me to a place of genuine happiness. This new relationship with Emily gave me a fresh perspective on what was possible. It made me question whether I could continue living in a state of unhappiness, or if I had the courage to change my life. It was a confusing and tumultuous time, but it was also the beginning of a journey that would challenge me to reconsider everything I had taken for granted. For now, I was caught between the comfort of familiarity and the excitement of something new. And as I looked into Emily's eyes, I couldn't help but feel that my life was on the brink of transformation. The decision to leave wasn't easy. Every night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with doubts and fears. But deep down, I knew that staying in my marriage was no longer an option. The growing distance between Laura and me had become unbearable, and my new relationship with Emily made it clear that I needed to make a change. I remember the day I finally decided to talk to Laura about it. It was a rainy afternoon, and the clouds seemed to mirror the heaviness in my heart. I sat her down in our living room, a place that once felt warm and welcoming, but now felt cold and distant. I knew that this conversation would be painful, but it was necessary. "Laura, we need to talk," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes, usually so sharp and guarded, softened with curiosity. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I've come to a decision." Laura's expression shifted from curiosity to concern as I continued. "I don't think we can fix what's broken between us. I've tried, and it hasn't worked. I believe it's best for both of us if we go our separate ways." Her reaction was a mix of shock and anger. She started to shout, asking how I could do this to her after everything we had been through. I tried to stay calm, even as her words cut deep. "Laura, this isn't about blame. It's about recognizing that we've grown apart and that continuing this way is only hurting us both." The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and logistics. I knew I had to make things as straightforward as possible, especially since we didn't have children to complicate the process. I wanted to ensure that Laura was taken care of, that she had everything she needed to move forward. It was important to me that she felt respected and valued, even as our paths diverged. I began to prepare for the separation by organizing everything. I decided to leave the house and the car to Laura. We had bought the house together, and I felt it was only fair that she kept it. The car, too, was a symbol of our shared life, and I wanted to make sure she had the stability she needed. It was a strange feeling, packing up my things and preparing to leave. I went through old photos, mementos of a life we once shared, and it was bittersweet. There were good memories mixed with the bad, and it felt like I was closing a chapter of my life. I packed what I could into a few bags and boxes, taking only the essentials. It was a physical representation of the emotional weight I was shedding. The night before I left, I stood in the empty living room, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. The house, which had once been filled with laughter and arguments, now felt like a shell of its former self. I took a deep breath, knowing that leaving was the right decision, even if it was difficult. The next morning, I left for a small apartment I had found in a quieter part of town. It was a modest place, but it felt like a blank canvas, ready for me to create a new life. The space was smaller, but it was mine, and it symbolized a fresh start. I spent the first few days unpacking and setting up my new home, trying to find comfort in the simplicity of it all. As I settled into my new life, I started to reflect on the changes I had made and the journey ahead. I was determined to move forward without the baggage of my past. My relationship with Emily had grown stronger, and she was a source of support and encouragement during this transition. We talked often about our plans for the future, and her presence made me feel hopeful. I also knew that rebuilding my life wouldn't be easy. There were challenges ahead, and I had to face them with an open heart and a clear mind. I began to explore new interests and hobbies, things I had put aside while I was wrapped up in the struggles of my old life. It felt liberating to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried for too long. One of the first things I did was take up a new hobby: photography. It was something I had always been interested in but never pursued seriously. I bought a camera and started taking pictures of the city, capturing moments that brought me joy. It was a way to express myself and find beauty in everyday life. I also began to focus on my career, looking for new opportunities that aligned with my passions and goals. It was a chance to reinvent myself professionally, and I approached it with enthusiasm and determination. Despite the progress I was making, there were still moments when I felt overwhelmed by the weight of my past. There were days when the loneliness crept in, and I missed the familiarity of my old life. But I reminded myself that I had chosen this path for a reason, that breaking free was the first step towards finding true happiness. As time went on, I found solace in the routine of my new life. I built new friendships, embraced new experiences, and started to feel a sense of belonging in my new environment. Emily and I continued to grow closer, and our relationship provided me with a sense of stability and joy that I had been missing for so long. Looking back, I realized that breaking free from my old life was not just about leaving Laura or moving into a new apartment. It was about reclaiming my happiness and taking control of my future. It was about acknowledging that I deserved more and making the difficult but necessary choices to achieve it. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I felt a renewed sense of hope and excitement. I was building a new life, one that was no longer defined by past mistakes or unresolved issues. And as I looked forward to the future, I knew that I was on the path to finding the happiness and fulfillment that had eluded me for so long. My new life had started to feel like a dream. It was strange how quickly everything seemed to fall into place once I took that first leap of faith. Emily and I had been together for several months, and our relationship had deepened in ways I hadn't thought possible. Every day with her felt like a gift, a chance to experience joy and love anew. One sunny morning, as we were enjoying breakfast on the small balcony of my apartment, Emily shared something that made my heart skip a beat. "Connor," she said, her eyes bright with excitement, "I've been thinking a lot about our future. I know we've only been together for a short time, but I can't help but dream about what could be next for us." I looked at her, curious and hopeful. "What are you thinking about?" "I've always wanted to live by a lake," she said, her voice full of enthusiasm. "Somewhere peaceful and beautiful, where we can build a life together. And, well?" She hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I also think about having children someday. I know it might sound fast, but I just feel so right about us, and I want to imagine our future together." Her words were like a balm to my soul. I had always imagined a different kind of life, but Emily's vision was so vivid and inviting that it made me eager to embrace it. "I'd love that," I said, taking her hand in mine. "A life by the lake sounds perfect, and the idea of starting a family with you, it's something I can truly look forward to." We began to search for a new home, one that matched Emily's dream and offered a fresh start for both of us. After a few weeks of looking, we found the perfect place, a charming house right on the edge of a serene lake. It had a rustic charm with large windows that offered stunning views of the water and the surrounding nature. The house seemed to embody everything we had both been yearning for. Moving into our new home felt like stepping into a new chapter of our lives. The house was a blank canvas, and we eagerly began to decorate and personalize it. Each room took shape with a mix of our tastes and styles, creating a space that felt uniquely ours. We spent weekends painting walls, arranging furniture, and making the house feel like a home. Living by the lake was everything we had hoped for and more. The mornings were filled with the gentle sounds of nature, and we often found ourselves taking long walks along the water, enjoying the tranquility that our new surroundings offered. It was a stark contrast to the chaos and stress of my old life, and it felt like a dream come true. As our relationship continued to blossom, Emily and I started discussing our plans for the future more seriously. We talked about what it would be like to raise a family, to build a life together that was full of love and laughter. Emily's desire to have children was something I was fully on board with, and we began to imagine what our future would look like with a little one in the mix. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset over the lake, Emily turned to me with a smile. "Connor, I know we've talked about having children, but I want to be honest about how much it means to me. I can't wait to share that experience with you." Her sincerity touched me deeply. I had never felt this kind of connection and certainty before. Emily's enthusiasm and warmth made me believe that we were on the right path, and I felt a profound sense of happiness and contentment. We also started to meet with doctors and specialists to make sure we were prepared for the possibility of starting a family. It was an exciting time, full of hope and anticipation. We approached each step with optimism, knowing that we were building a future together that was grounded in love and shared dreams. The more we planned and prepared, the more I realized how much I had changed since leaving my old life behind. I felt more in touch with who I was and what I wanted. Emily had helped me rediscover joy and purpose, and our new life together was a testament to the power of new beginnings. One day, as we were exploring a nearby town, Emily looked at me with a mischievous grin. "I've been thinking about how we should celebrate this new chapter in our lives." I raised an eyebrow, curious. "Oh, how do you propose we do that?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, wrapped gift. "I thought it would be fun to get something special for our new home." "Open it." I unwrapped the gift to find a beautiful handcrafted photo frame. Inside was a picture of us taken on one of our lake walks, a moment captured in time that symbolized the happiness we had found together. I was touched by the gesture, and it felt like a perfect representation of our new beginning. "This is wonderful," I said, placing the frame on a shelf in our living room. "Thank you," Emily smiled, leaning in for a hug. "I just wanted to remind us of how far we've come and how much we have to look forward to." As we settled into our new life, it's a quiet morning by the lake, and I find myself sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the mist rise from the water. The world around me is peaceful, and it's hard to believe how much has changed in such a short time. As I sip my coffee and listen to the gentle sounds of nature, I can't help but reflect on the journey that brought me here. Looking back, it's clear to me now that leaving my old life was the best decision I could have made. The challenges and heartaches of the past were difficult, but they led me to this place of true happiness. I think about how long I stayed in a relationship that no longer served me, and I wonder why it took me so long to make the necessary changes. There were so many moments when I questioned myself. I'd lie awake at night, feeling trapped in a life that wasn't fulfilling. I knew something was wrong, but I was afraid of the consequences of leaving. I feared the impact on Laura, on our shared life, and on what people might think. But in the end, those fears were nothing compared to the joy and contentment I have now. Emily's presence in my life has been a beacon of hope. Our relationship has shown me what true love and companionship can be. Every day with her feels like a new adventure, and the way she looks at me with such warmth and trust reminds me of how much I had been missing. She's given me a new perspective on life, one that is filled with possibility and promise. The house by the lake is more than just a home. It's a symbol of the new beginning we've embraced together. The tranquility of our surroundings and the joy of our shared experiences have helped me heal from the past and move forward with a sense of purpose. It's hard to believe that I once lived in a place where I felt so disconnected and unhappy. I think about the reasons why I stayed in my marriage for as long as I did. There were moments of happiness, of course, but they were overshadowed by the growing distance and dissatisfaction. I realize now that I was holding on to the hope that things would get better, that the love we once shared would somehow be enough to overcome the challenges we faced. But hope alone wasn't enough. Part of me wonders why I didn't see the signs sooner, why I didn't take action earlier. Was it fear of change, or was it simply a reluctance to admit that the relationship had run its course? I suppose it's a combination of both. Change is daunting, and admitting that something isn't working can be a painful process. But I've learned that it's never too late to make a change, to seek out a life that brings true happiness. I spent years in a relationship that was no longer right for me, but I don't regret the decision to leave. It was a difficult choice, but it was necessary for me to find the happiness I had been searching for. As I sit here, watching the sun rise over the lake, I am filled with a profound sense of gratitude. The challenges of the past have shaped me into the person I am today, and I wouldn't change a thing. The journey has been long and sometimes painful, but it has led me to a place where I can truly appreciate the beauty of life and the joy of a loving relationship. I think about Laura and the life we once shared. I hope she has found peace and happiness in her own way. I know that ending our marriage was the right thing to do, but I also recognize that it was a difficult decision that affected both of us. It's a reminder that life is full of complexities, and that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to the most meaningful changes. Emily and I have built something special together, and I'm excited about the future we are creating. We talk about our dreams, our plans for a family, and the life we want to build. Each day is a new opportunity to grow and to experience the joy of being together. The love we share is something I cherish deeply, and it has given me a renewed sense of purpose and happiness. I've learned that true happiness comes from being true to oneself, from making choices that align with one's values and desires. It's about embracing change and being willing to take risks in order to find fulfillment. The journey hasn't been easy, but it has been worth every step. As I finish my coffee and stand up to start my day, I feel a deep sense of peace and contentment. I know that I've made the right choices, and I am grateful for the life I now have. The past is behind me, and I look forward to the future with hope and excitement. I no longer question why it took me so long to make the changes I needed. Instead, I focus on the present and the possibilities that lie ahead. I am living a life that feels true to who I am, and I am surrounded by love and happiness. And as I look out at the lake, I know that this is just the beginning of a beautiful journey, one that I am eager to continue with Emily by my side. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you next time.